Hey, Ed from Precision Gun Reviews here, and I just wanted to take a look at this PPS from Walther that we've had a couple of videos on. I want to do a comparison with another 6-round single-stack 9mm polymer striker-fired pistol because this is a very competitive genre. This is a very competitive market for firearms these days, especially for the concealed carry market. You have the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield, and you have the Glock 43, and you have the Springfield XDS. And then you have all the Kahrs, which we've shown a lot of on this channel. This being a 6-rounder versus the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 7 rounds in its flush base plate makes it a little bit shorter, but let's compare it to another gun with 6 rounds. Here's the Kahr CM9. This is a much lighter firearm. It comes in at about 15.9 ounces with an empty magazine, whereas the PPS comes in at about 21.1 ounces. And for the same amount of firepower, 6 plus 1 in either, you're getting a much smaller and lighter package here than with the PPS. And you would think that that also translates to a lighter recoiling weapon in the PPS. Well, I don't find that to be the case. Kahr has some magical way of minimizing recoil or perceived recoil in their very small firearms. Remember, they've been making these single stack 9mm for decades already. They started the trend with their steel framed guns and then transitioned into polymers. But obviously with the P series, they were somewhat prohibitively expensive at first, and only recently with this C series and sort of its not fantastic fit and finish has it become accessible to the masses. But they've managed to reduce recoil tremendously in these small guns, and it's the same thing here. When I shoot these two firearms back to back, I find this one to be they're both manageable, but this one tends to feel stiffer in hand when I shoot it. And it's surprising because you expect this weight, 5 extra ounces, to translate into a lower perceived recoil. Anyway, that's that. Let's take a look at the size. So when we line these up, you can see there that the Kahr is quite a bit shorter. So laying them side by side like this, you could see that the Walther is quite a bit longer. This is a 6.3 inch overall firearm, whereas this is 5.42. The barrel length on the PPS is 3.18 inches, where the barrel length on the Kahr is 3 inches. And that's another benefit of the Kahr design, is that for a much diminished overall length, you have an almost equivalent barrel length. And that's because with this design, you have more going on in a smaller amount of space behind the chamber than you do in a lot of other pistols, meaning this chamber sits further back, closer to the grip, with more barrel in front of it leading up to the muzzle. And here you see there's that difference. 0.18 inches right there. Meanwhile, the gun is 0.9 inches shorter. Other differences between these guns are those that are not strictly size and weight related. They have a completely different trigger. This has a safe action style trigger with a hard wall and crisp break. This has a long double action trigger that is very smooth and completely consistent in its pull from beginning to end. Both very good triggers, both very different from one another, different design philosophy. They break down differently as well. I guess we could show that here. The magazines don't drop out of the Kahr, whereas they drop beautifully out of the PPS. So we're going to take a look at the different ways of breaking these guns down. The Kahr pops that pin out, pulls the trigger, and slides off the slide, whereas the PPS simply pulls back and slides the slide. So it's an easier process to break down the PPS. However, not terribly difficult on the Kahr. The Kahr K9, as you saw in our review, was basically impossible to break down, but this uses a similar mechanism with much easier result. Here, adding to the weight, you have these very long slide rails, all steel, on the PPS. Here you have mostly plastic, all the way up to the front with a little tab of metal in the back. Same on this side. Still a long rail, but all plastic, little metal in the back, and it has some secondary rails that run along the front of the slide here in the dust cover. And that's primarily the differences between these two guns. You're getting 6 rounds in either one, different mechanics, different quality of components. The polymer on the Kahr is really very crudely put together. You'll see it sort of chewed up at the back here. Not my favorite thing to look at. The gun works flawlessly, but if that's something that'll bother you, the way the polymer ends up looking might disgust you. As opposed to the Walther, which is beautiful in its construction, excellent fit and finish. It definitely seems much more solid, much better workmanship, and also functions flawlessly. So both of them are excellent firearms. Here you save a lot of weight and a decent amount of size for the same amount of firepower, 6 plus 1. And that's about it. That's the Kahr CM9 versus the Walther PPS M2 in 9mm, both single stack 9mm. If you like our videos, please do give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel to see all of our videos as they come out. And as always, until next time, I'm Ed from Precision Gun Reviews. Stay safe.